Welcome back to the Shared Services Advantage series. And in episode number 9, we went inside the engine room where we dived into what it looks like to manage a shared services pod day to day, from coaching to dashboards to huddles, performance management. We went into it all. But today, we're stepping one layer deeper because behind every high performing pod is a solid foundation of training. And if that foundation isn't there, almost everything else falls apart. So today, we're going to do a deep dive into how to build a real training engine inside shared services. We're going to answer key questions around how do you transfer the knowledge from the business? How do you document it clearly? And how do you train your staff, your shared services agents, not to just do the job, but actually do it at a high standard? And to help us break it down, Gyner and I are welcoming Pooja Verma, our Director of Training at Origo, and she's going to walk us through how her team handles everything from knowledge transfer to nesting and go live ownership. Pooja, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, and really excited to share all the learnings and the process that you just talked about. So I guess we're going to start with what the onboarding process really entails. But before I walk
Yes.
you through what the onboarding process is, I just want to share that before coming to Origo, my background obviously included handling enterprise clients. Where
Mm,
everything is turnkey. You've handed over SOPs, you have your training decks, you have historical data, you have KPIs. Everything is structured and mature, but that's obviously not the world that we operate in right
in the lower
now,
middle
because
market. Yeah.
yes, in the so most of the accounts that we onboard in the mid market, they are no playbooks. So we don't have
To say the least.
yeah,
Oh,
to
so,
say the least.
hold on. As somebody who comes from the big corporate world for many,
Mhm.
many years, I will comment a little bit that sometimes playbooks in enterprise environments are good playbooks. They look good, but
Yeah.
Mm,
Pooja, as I'm sure you have experienced over time, like the middle markets, having a
Yeah.
playbook and using the playbook are also
are
two very
two
different
things.
things.
Oh, yes,
Absolutely.
absolutely. Absolutely. And that's exactly, and specifically, like you rightly said, with the kind of accounts that we have, when there are no playbooks, it gives us the leverage to kind of, have that control there.
Mm,
So most of the accounts that we are onboarding, like I said, because there's no process documentation. So what exists mostly is tribal knowledge, things the onshore team has learned on the job. So that's really the baseline. So we start from scratch, and like what Yassine mentioned. So we don't call our trainers just trainers; we call them consultants, and I feel very excited every time I say that word, because they don't just deliver the training; they are
mm,
the ones who architect the process with the client from the ground up. So
yeah.
they don't just deliver content, they build it. They work side by side with our client to design the process, create the materials, and advise on how to make the offshoring journey successful for them. So we are
Absolutely.
in that entire process. We are sharing our best practices across different service lines. We advise them on how to simplify, standardize, scale, because most of our clients, they don't just need offshore labor; they need operational clarity, and that's what we bring in. So, our trainers also feel very excited when we say that they
Yeah.
are
And I love
consultants
that.
and advisor.
And so, Pooja, so maybe let's start from the beginning.
Yeah,
Before anyone builds a playbook, a deck, do a training class, we have to first get the knowledge out of people's heads, right? So
correct.
maybe you
Yeah.
could walk us through what
Hmm.
what a knowledge transfer, what we call internally. What does a knowledge transfer, this transfer of knowledge from tacit knowledge from someone's head, you write and put it on a document, what does this knowledge transfer looks like in a shared services setting, and how do you
Hmm.
approach it from ground up, like you said, from zero, and how does your team starts building the foundation?
Right. So, so journey begins with the knowledge transfer. Our trainers partner directly with the onshore SME to extract how the process is being done onshore end-to-end process. So we don't just document the step; we map the full process. We then identify the sub processes which are in scope, and then use a swim lane approach to clarify the dependencies between onshore and offshore. Then we start drilling down into each task, both from a process and a systems perspective, and we translate all that information into what we call the work instructions. So they are really click level guides that any new hire should be able to follow
Right.
independently. So it's a very
And
high
is that
touch.
being done virtually? Are you flying
Yeah.
to the site?
So
Are you sitting down with the SME or the subject matter expert? And how do you decide? How do you kind of select that subject matter expert?
It is done via, it's done virtually. So we schedule time with the SME, and how do we identify the SME? So it's really the person who's doing the job and who has all that information on how the process really works. And we've seen that challenge, with some of the accounts, because we ended up, having those discussions with the POC, but the POC is not really the subject matter expert.
Mm.
So there's still a lot of knowledge which kind of gets which we haven't really uncovered. So so this process really entails us working with the subject matter expert of somebody who has complete knowledge of how that process is being done. So it's a
Right.
very high touch, because like I said, it's a consultative model, because we're really starting with nothing on paper. So
Right.
our knowledge transfer is actually also attended not just by a trainer but also our quality analysts. So the objective is not just to design the training materials but also to design
Right.
the quality assessment form, which is going to be used for audits
Pu-
post the training phase.
Pooja, question for you in middle
Uh-huh.
markets, and by the way, being a customer myself, understanding this, I have to assume some of the both the POC and subject matter expert at certain points in time may be quite resistant to the change,
Mm,
Mm.
or
yes.
yeah, how do you guys
Mm.
overcome that resistance? Like, what are some strategies you've used successfully, or how do you get the customer engaged at a higher level potentially to help you get past that resistance?
Yeah. And interesting, that you bought that, because we have seen that as a challenge with some of the accounts that we've onboarded recently, because there's a lot of change management that needs to be done onshore. And sometimes when that change management hasn't been done, it's difficult to get that buy-in, So the POC or the SME is very resistant, like you said, in sharing that knowledge, and which is why and that's when we bring in our client success folks in and have that discussion with the higher ups, listing the objectives. So when we onboard a client, when we have the stakeholders, we actually share with them the onboarding journey and what are the expectations or the deliverables that we're looking at from each phase, so that then they can, they know exactly the end objective of every phase,
Mm.
specifically the knowledge transfer. So they can then communicate that, to the POCs or the SMEs. So at any given point, if we feel that, we are not getting the knowledge, we don't really exit that phase and move on to the next till
Yeah.
the trainer is 100% confident. And of course, there's a lot of rapport building, and
Yeah.
the trainers and the POCs are kind of working together, so we try and keep them engaged at all times and not make them feel very overwhelmed with that entire process, because that happens as well. This is probably the first time that they're getting into on the offshoring side. So our trainers that way, I think they do a great job in uh, building that rapport with our SMEs and ensuring that they're able to download that information from
Yeah.
there.
So as you think about that, as you're developing your swim lanes and starting to execute on the process, I would have to assume during that the process of execution, gaps start to show up, right?
Mm,
Between
Mm.
what is the subject matter expert and what the point of contact teach you. By the way, I say that because sometimes people don't know acronyms like we do. So I want to make sure everyone's aligned to
Yep.
POC and SME terminology. So there's gaps in in the process as defined and the process as executed. How do you share that back with the SME and point of contact without feeling incriminating, right? Because to them, it's like, oh my gosh, I either I didn't tell you that intentionally, or I didn't realize that was a gap, one or both,
Hmm.
right? Let's assume it's more positive intent, the second one. Like,
Yes.
how do you
Mm.
share that feedback in that kind of feedback loop?
Yeah. So, once we complete the knowledge transfer and, once we have the training material designed, we have a review session with our subject matter experts. So we're reviewing the content that has been documented. So during that time, there's a lot of back and forth, where we try and figure out, like, have we incorporated all possible scenarios, or is it just, following the typical happy path, or where, are there still some scenarios which haven't been documented. So it's a very collaborative approach. It's not like just a trainer, suggesting, or just delivering the training material, but they work very collaboratively with the subject matter expert to ensure that every possible scenario has been documented. But having
Yeah.
said that, of course there are gaps, and those gaps, what we call as the hidden factories, come in when we actually move into what we call the nesting phase, which is really the incubation period, where they actually get to deploy all of that in a real time environment when they're actually doing the actual task. So there are a lot of those hidden factories, and we are like, oh, okay, you know what, this wasn't covered during the knowledge transfer. So then we again, get in touch with the subject matter experts. So the SME, the trainer, the quality analyst, the team managers, they're all working as one team during that entire process. So like I said, there's a lot of back and forth. They could be that today, I did these three tasks, there was a different scenario, how do you think I should approach
Yeah,
it?
a lot of exception
It's
handling.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So and that's where, they also feel that they are involved in the process, and it's not just them downloading the information, then we take over. So we're working as one team, and that's
Yeah.
when it's easier for us to kind of get their buy-in as well.
Would it be fair to say it really follows the PDCA, right, mental model? You plan for
Hmm.
whatever material you want to download, right, and you transfer, then you do it, you transfer the material, but then there's a point where you're reviewing it with the subject matter expert and say, hey, here's what you said that we
Yeah.
should be doing, here's documented, right, and then here's what we did. They check it, and then you can make any adjustments from there. If it's good to go, you just now train the agent or the staff on executing it, and that goes into another feedback loop. As the team
Correct. Yes.
members start executing the process, they're
Hmm.
kicking back information to say, hey, the process is complete, or it's incomplete. I'm facing situations where there are exceptions that I need to handle that were not covered by the training or by the work instructions, and then you go
Right.
back to that subject matter expert and you go through another iteration until it's complete. And it's an ongoing cycle. Is that fair to say, Pooja?
Yes, that's absolutely right. And then, that's also one of the reasons why it's very important for us to get a sign off on those work instructions before we actually move into the nesting phase. And, as far as the updates and plugging in those scenarios or exceptions is concerned, that doesn't really end. It's an ongoing process. So even after the project goes live, and even once we have handed over the team members to service delivery, there's still updates that keep coming in. Systems keep changing, tools are changing, there are process updates that are coming in, there are new hidden factories that get uncovered even after the process goes live. So we
Mm.
the trainers are continuously working with the SMEs, along with, of course, our team managers, to making sure that our training materials are updated at all times. So that consultative advisor role kind of continues, so it does not really end there. So it's an ongoing process.
Especially an environment, Giner, that is not uncommon for you and
Mhm.
executives at portfolio companies. Whenever there's a new acquisition or a new ERP that's being implemented or a change of process, that all needs to be structured approach, right?
That's right.
In that knowledge transfer. So Pooja, how long does the initial transfer of knowledge? How long does this process typically? Let's take collections for instance, a project that we just worked with Gyner on, and it's been an exciting rollout, bringing in significant amount of cash flow through the door.
Right.
How long does it take to really get a grasp of the process to be able to start executing on it, especially if you have a sponsor that is right there, the level of urgency is way up there, and we need to start bringing in right, we can't take our time, and we can't take the next 3 months to do a knowledge transfer. We need to start bringing in money through the door.
Yeah.
How does that process take on
Yeah.
average?
So typically, on an average, we take about 7 to 10 days for that entire knowledge transfer to be
The initial knowledge
complete.
transfer.
Yeah, the initial
And
knowledge
how much
transfer.
of that subject matter expert, like say, Geener's finance manager or treasurer or AP manager, whatever,
Mhm.
right? They've been assigned as the subject matter expert. How much of their time do you need in that 7 to 10 day period?
So it really depends. Talking about the collections, a recent project that we onboarded, we got a lot of support from our SME. So we were scheduling our daily knowledge transfer calls for at
It's
least
a daily,
4 hours. Yeah, it's a daily call, 4
4 hours. So pretty,
hours. Yeah,
pretty involved. Does that
yeah.
surprise you, Geener, to hear that?
No, no, not at all. Not at all. No.
Yeah, so and we love that, because then it just gives us an opportunity to make sure that everything is in place before we actually move into the training phase. But there are times where the subject matter experts have their own deliverables that they have onshore, so it becomes difficult for them to give out that time, and that's where the knowledge transfer process would kind of get extended. So it
Mm.
and we outline, so the first time when we get introduced to our SMEs, the first step is really to put that knowledge transfer outline in place. So we collaboratively decide, like, what are the topics that we need to cover in our training documentation journey, and then how much time do we need to take for documenting every section of that, and then how much time are we looking at, that we can get from our SME. So we put that entire
So
schedule
is
in
that like a
place.
curriculum? You design a
Yes,
curriculum.
the
Okay.
initial curriculum design is done.
And
So
that's
that's
like
really the
one
first step.
day, 2 day
That's
process.
just a 1 day process.
Okay.
So
In one
that's the first
session,
step.
you get it done.
Yeah,
Yes.
I don't think it doesn't sound unreasonable, and here's why. So, as other people listen to this, they're like, "Oh, 4 hours sounds like a lot." You guys are downloading years of, I
Yes.
think you call them factories. Um, you know,
Hidden factories.
Hidden
Yes, hidden
factories.
years of hidden
tacit
factories,
knowledge that's
right?
that's been in their head for
So
yeah, decades
years
sometimes.
to hours, might
Mm,
sound like a lot, but all this communal hidden factory knowledge has to get documented, right?
right.
And become more process oriented. That's going
Yeah.
to take a little bit of time. So people have
Yes.
to set that expectation that
Correct.
hours is not unreasonable for years of hidden factory kind of defining.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And one thing I also want to add is, when we actually do that initial outline, uh, we also identify the service lines, So let's say we
Hmm.
are onboarding something in the collection service line, but when we actually start getting into that discussion, we discover that there is probably more than one service line. There's a little bit of billing that's happening also, apart from collection. So
A
our
little bit of
so
cash
yeah, a
application, and
little
a
bit
little
of
bit of
cash application.
contact, and a little bit of
Yeah.
this, a little bit of that, because I mean that's the reality of the lower middle market, right?
Yes.
People wearing multiple hats, so you need to bifurcate, right? In their head, it's one process, but for someone coming in for the first time looking at it, that's the, I guess, one of the um, value enablement of having someone such as Pooja and her team come in. It's like they're looking at the process for the first time, very objectively, and they're really questioning every bit of it. It's like, does this belong here? Is this really where it should be done? Is this right? And you're trying to organize it, and this is probably the first time the subject matter expert actually probably sees it documented in their
Mm,
face, right? Because it's all in their head. So it's an aha moment also for the subject matter expert.
right.
But to your point, Pooja, part of the value add there is like we bifurcate these service lines. It's
Yes.
like you don't actually have one process; you've got actually four lumped
Yeah.
into one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is really an aha moment. And, and it just makes it easier for us to then follow our knowledge transfer process, because then we do it per service line, and then it makes it easier for us to ensure that, we are
Yeah.
downloading everything that's needed.
And every service line has their own KPIs and has its own
Absolutely.
requirement. And this is
Hmm.
where that this journey of standardizing your processes starts, so you can scale it. It's not just
Yes.
Correct.
about throwing people at it. Uh, building a shared service center. It's not about, hey, let's find cheap labor in the Philippines and India and put them together and just say, here's a playbook, go execute it. No, it's really going through that journey of process rigor and
Yeah.
process understanding. You're studying the process, you're documenting it, you are looking for areas to improve it, you're looking for areas to, how do you even, just by the nature of trying to document it, you're trying to make it, how do you take someone from the street, give them a document and get them to execute on it? That's, I some folks underestimate what it takes to embark this type of knowledge and make it so easy that you can pick up anyone with, obviously with the required skills, but you can pick up anyone from the street, hire them, and they can start executing that. To get to that point, you
Yeah.
have to done so much work to simplify the work instructions and the SOP to execute on it, and that's when your process gets scalable.
So,
So
Yes.
Pooja,
hey,
go ahead.
you see, I want to build on that for a second with you. There's a little bit of an aha moment for operators like myself or leaders myself we need to think about. There's always this question of how do I start, right?
Mm,
I'm building a platform. I'm in the middle market. I have a number of companies that I'm trying to harmonize. I'm trying to figure out what the best path is going forward.
mm,
It feels sometimes overwhelming with this idea of starting. Starting
mm,
the
Mm.
process mapping, starting the swim lanes, starting to understand how do I get to the scale that you talked about, Yassin. I think this is when you think of the offshore piece, don't only think about like your point, the savings, the process man. We think about, hey, it's a great starting point for me. It's a great resource external to my day-to-day operation with
Yeah.
minimal disruption to my existing business to
yes,
get started on all of that, right? So I
yes,
want to
Mhm.
make sure that point comes across, because I think everybody doesn't think about that. Like, this is a good starting point, and your business can continue to operate today as is, right? Because I know as a customer, that's what we're doing, right? That was something critical for myself, that we could continue to operate the business while we, in parallel, build these processes and optimize and scale.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's really I love that, Giner. It's like you need to bring this level of operational excellence, and it's like almost an internal operational excellence project, right? That you're having running in parallel, and you're getting, and to your point, without disrupting the business, it's the work that you need to do anyway,
Yes.
Mm.
especially if you have an aggressive M&A strategy. It's the work you have to do to really deliver value to your partners that you're bringing onto the platform. That's the value that you're delivering beyond the money, beyond, right? What's the support? What's the value proposition for them to joining your platform versus any other platform, especially in a mature competitive market such as HVAC, or all roofing, or whatever vertical you're in. It's that value, that enablement. It's like bringing in this process expertise, and enablement can be huge. So with that said, so we've got the processes, we've done the knowledge transfer, we've got it documented, and we've hired the people. Now let's
Yeah.
move into the delivery. How do you structure the training once the documentation in place? And what's your approach, to classroom versus hands-on? And how do you think about this whole process? And you've mentioned, another vernacular keyword, nesting.
Yeah.
So maybe walk us through that process, of onboarding a
Right.
new staff, a new agent, and how do you deliver that training to them?
hmm Yeah. So, once we get a sign off on our work instructions, our training outline is also signed off on by the client. So, our training approach is so it's we have the team members, once we have them onboarded, our training approach is to conduct the training per service line. That is, if we have more than one service line. So, the first part of the training, of course, they go through certain soft skills trainings, which we feel are essential for them, depending on the kind of role that we have onboarded them on. And after that, they undergo the process specific training. And during the process specific training, it is a mix of um, hands-on experience in terms of with the different tools that they're going to be using. So we ensure that everyone has that access before they actually move into that training phase. So they get hands-on tool experience, system experience, as well as the theoretical knowledge that is being imparted to them by the trainer. So it's a mix of soft skills training, tools training, and then the theoretical knowledge in terms of the process training, the process knowledge, the step by step steps, the work instructions, which have already been documented in our training material. So typically, on an average, our process training takes about 5 to 7 days. 7 days is on the higher side. And again, like I said, that if we just have one service line, our training would end in about 5 days, 3 to 5 days. And we do have a very strict assessment that's done before they actually exit that training phase. And that assessment is based on, so we're assessing them on the process knowledge and then the system knowledge as well. So once we complete that assessment, that's when we decide that, okay, are they ready to move into the next phase, which we call the nesting. And that's, really where all that action happens. And
Well, can you define nesting for us? What do you
yeah.
mean by nesting?
So nesting is like we call it like it's an incubation period where they are now actually ready to deploy all the learnings that they have taken during that process training phase. So they are actually doing the actual tasks in that nesting
They're
period.
executing the
They're
transaction.
executing the transaction. That's right. And while they're executing the transaction, they have the support from the trainer. They have support from the subject matter expert onshore, and then of course our quality analyst is there as well, because our
Reviewing every
objective.
transaction.
Yes. So our objective of nesting is as simple as we want zero defects. And when I say that is, we want to ensure that we audit 100% of all the transactions. So there's no sampling, there are no shortcuts. Our goal is to
Mm,
exit only when we and the client are fully confident that the team member can now operate independently. So
mm.
during nesting, the team members, they begin handling live transactions under, very close supervision. Every single task is audited by the quality analyst, and uh, but then the nesting is also where the real process gaps, we spoke about, they emerge. So those
What do you
hidden
mean by
facts.
that?
So a lot of times, like I said, we want to ensure that our work instructions and the knowledge transfer is complete, but we also have to understand that from a subject matter expert's standpoint, this is the first time that they are getting that exposure of offshoring a process. So for example, if I have to download that information, I may think that, oh, I've uncovered everything, like I've shared whatever that I knew. But when the team members actually start doing the live transactions, that's when all those exceptions come in. Oh, I
Mm,
don't know how to do this A task because it's not part of my work instructions. And that's when we get in touch with the SME, like, how do we process this? So that's why, these exceptions or workaround are the SME has probably forgotten to mention it,
yeah,
and that gets
they take it for
uncovered.
granted.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
that's get uncovered during. So that's why the nesting is very, very critical, because it reveals the unhappy parts that we call. And we don't just
the
uncover them, we
variation, all the
document them.
exception handling. Yeah,
Yes, yeah. And we
yeah.
document them, we build them into our WIs, work instructions. We update our quality assessment forms accordingly. So we don't, exit nesting lightly. We look for a very clear trend of zero defects before we green
You're
light the
looking for
transition.
quality at this time. You're not looking for productivity just yet. You're not looking, okay,
Yes.
you need to, the expectation is to be processing 50 transactions a day. No,
Yeah.
that's not what you're looking. It's like, okay, maybe here's 5 to 10, 15 transactions every day.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
want you to get it, I want you to do it without any errors. And I want you to flag any transactions you're not able to process due to, being it not really covered in the training that was delivered, and so that we can then kick back that feedback to the
Correct.
subject matter expert and iterate on the work instructions and make sure that we document, because and how much of the what's the level of completeness of would you say of the work instructions by the time you hit nesting? Is it 50% complete, 70-80%? What how much do you uncover during nesting?
So just based off the experience of the accounts that we've onboarded in the last just couple of months, we have seen that the knowledge transfer really captures only 60% of the knowledge. The
Wow.
rest 40% really comes in during the nesting phase.
Yeah.
So like you rightly
How does
said,
that land for you, right? Because you're as an executive, you want results yesterday, but then you
Yeah.
hear about these things taking so much time. How does that land for you, and what's your expectation during this nesting or pilot period from a performance of your shared services team?
I think when using my example, what we talked about internally in our current kind of process that we're doing is what's kind of a win that we feel is realistic for that first 30 to 60 days. Like we have to set like a real
Hmm.
kind of and we don't share that with you guys, frankly, and I don't think most customers will. But I mean, if speaking from the customer's perspective, you need to set an objective that's realistic, right? Understanding that this nesting period, again, like we talked about, you're going to have a lot of these mini factories that they're going to uncover. So essentially, you have to say, okay, what would we be happy with as an output of this initial pilot period, right?
Hmm.
And then second, like what would be like excelling? Like, hey, if we saw this, we'd be really excited, right? Internally. What I will say is we've kind of hit the second tier in our pilot. so,
Boom.
but yeah, I mean, internally, be very realistic. Like, if you expect that the pilot is going to outperform your onshore team in the pilot period, I think that's an unrealistic expectation, right?
Mm.
A
Okay.
more realistic, grounded expectation would be, do they perform in the next theme period at least as good as
That's far.
our onshore team, right? Um, and then what pickups do we start to see? So pickups are, as you said, we're mapping out the processes. People show up on time. They work their hours. There are other kind of softer benefits that you start to measure internally, and you start to say, the aha moment is, hey, we're getting the same performance today. Great, because you can assume that that performance will continue to improve over time, right? And we're getting more productive folks on the phone. They're already there. They're making phone calls regularly. There's other kind of metrics that say, hey, the
Mm.
future is kind of bright here.
Hmm.
I love it. So, Pooja, how do you operate with that pressure on you, right? How do you make sure that you stay in touch with your corporate or with the client, and you're
Yeah.
communicating on progress and managing expectations, if whether you're behind or you're ahead? How do you collaborate with the shared services team to set to make sure that you remain aligned with your point of contact
Yeah.
and your
Right.
executive sponsor?
Yeah. And before I actually talk about, I also want to touch upon the fact that while the nesting is just it's more of a quality gate. So yes, we are not we're not like chasing some numbers, but at the same time, before we actually move into the nesting, we do identify some KPIs. Because we want some KPIs, performance indicators, key performance indicators, to be in place for us to really, have that kind of benchmark that this is how we would want our team members to perform. And interestingly, the KPIs also change, during that
Mm.
nesting period, because, and that's where again, we come in and provide that suggestion to our clients, saying that, these are the KPIs that we should be chasing, and these are our targets that we should be having. So again, it's a very collaborative effort that we suggest, and then there's feedback that loop that continuously goes on.
Mm.
So the KPI, so it's not just our training material that undergo changes or a quality assessment form, but it's
Yeah,
also the
you're looking at
KPIs.
the whole process,
Yes,
whether it's
correct.
the flow, the steps, the data, the systems. You're looking at the profile of
Hmm.
the staff that are required to execute on this task. Yeah, so it's a
Yeah.
very iterative and collaborative approach.
Yes, yes. And then, to your point, like, how do we ensure that the subject matter experts and the key people are engaged at all times? So, like I said earlier, it's it even if so once we complete the nesting, of course, that decision of us going live is not just us taking that decision, but we collectively take that decision along with operations and a client. We share the quality scores, we share the discuss the performance of every team member, and then we take a decision that are we ready to exit nesting or not.
And that's
um,
typically happening like on a call, on a
it
like weekly
happens on a
review.
call. Yes.
Okay,
So
so there's
we
a
so
weekly
during
review cadence.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
go
during
ahead.
that entire nesting period, we actually have daily stand ups also.
Okay.
Um, and sometimes we have the SMEs part of those daily stand ups, sometimes no, depending on their work schedule. But yes, we do have like a weekly review wherein we are sharing those numbers, we are sharing the insights and the performance of our team members, getting their feedback. And what do they think? Like, what are some of the insights coming from them that we need to incorporate in our process. So that collaboration happens on a weekly basis. Based on that, we make the necessary changes. And once we actually take that decision of going live, and we hand over our team to operations to then take it forward and manage the team as per the KPIs that have been signed off on and that have been decided on, we still are continuously, from a training and quality standpoint, we are continuously engaged with our subject matter experts, and our operations team, because the objective, again, like I said, it's not just our ensuring that our training materials are updated at all times, but we're also looking at some process improvements, that we can suggest to our client based off the quality audits that we have done. So the quality assessment form, I just want to share that as well, is so we follow the COPC standards when we design a quality assessment form. So we have business critical, customer critical, and compliance critical elements there. So every form is very work instruction based. So there's no, wake scoring. So if it's not in the work instruction, it doesn't make it to the audit form. So just like our training materials, our quality assessment form is also undergoes changes as and when the process is, undergoing change. And like I said, that the processes that we've seen are continuously going through those changes. Their system change, they're moving on to the new tool, or there is a new tool that's getting implemented, or there is another service line that gets included in our process. So every time there is a new service line that gets added, our process of onboarding starts again. So we again
Exactly.
start with the knowledge transfer, we again move into the nesting. So it's that, the same process
So the work really
that we
doesn't stop at go live.
it doesn't,
And
yes.
I think that brings this episode to a great wrap here. If you want, what I'm hearing you, Pooja, say, if you want shared service to scale with consistency, training isn't optional. It's really the foundation. From capturing knowledge to documenting the process to onboarding, nesting, and continuous iteration on
Yeah.
the work instructions. Training is really what makes shared services repeatable. And if you're not investing in it like a system, you're
Yeah.
really rebuilding it every time someone leaves, right? And that's where the big risk is, whether it's
Yeah.
at corporate or in a shared service center. You really want to make sure that this whole knowledge is documented. So Pooja, thank you
Right.
so much for
Thank you.
walking us through how your team builds that engine. And Gyner, as always, I appreciate the leadership lens on how training fits into the bigger picture and what your expectations are as an executive sponsor for these type of projects. And in our next episode, we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about hiring. How do you hire for shared services? What do you look for in an agent or in a team leader or in a trainer? And how do you build a pipeline that lets you scale without lowering the bar? Because the biggest concern with sometimes with offshoring is like, do I need to compromise on quality for cost? Uh, and you'll be pleasantly surprised with the answer. And we'll be joined by Rowan, my partner and COO, who leads talent at Origo and has built shared services hiring systems from the ground up. So Gainer and I will be drilling Rowan on a lot of questions around hiring and how do you find the right fit and how what do you look for in terms of skills and all of that on our next episode. And until then, make your days great, and thank you again, Pooja and Giner, for your
Thank you
insight
so
today.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.